Imagine being married for 7 years, and it's not the perfect marriage because no marriage is perfect, but it's a good one, a stable one that makes sense. Your husband travels for work, he calls when he's away, he's home for the important things, he pays the bills. He is, by every measure you've ever used to assess these things, a pretty good husband. Now, imagine the moment that entire version of your life ends. It doesn't end with a found message, it doesn't end with a late night conversation. It doesn't end the way it ends in films with a dramatic confrontation and someone slamming a door. It ends with a 5-year-old girl holding a plastic cup of apple juice, looking up at your husband and asking him for another one because he's her daddy and you had absolutely no idea. Rachel had met Daniel at a friend's birthday dinner when she was 29. He was charming in a specific way that was kind of just low-key and effortless, just like genuinely present, not performing or anything. He just was cool as. He asked questions and actually listens to the answers. He made her laugh without trying. By the time that dinner ended, she had given him her number without even having to ask for it. They were engaged within 2 years, married at 31, settled in a mid-sized city in the Midwest where Daniel worked in regional sales for a medical equipment company. This is a job that required him to cover a territory spanning of 3 states. He was on the road 2 weeks out of every month. It was the rhythm of their life. She had her own career, her own friendships, her own full life, and the separations between them when he was traveling for work was completely manageable. And it made their reunions even that much better. So there were no red flags in their marriage, and she had been asked this question plenty of times, but she really had absolutely no reason to be suspicious of anything because he was loving her pretty well and she was not lacking attention. They had a pretty good chemistry together, so she didn't see no red flags. There was this company picnic, and the company picnic was an annual event, the kind of low-key summer afternoon that large companies usually organize for the community and the employees, where they encourage everyone to bring their families. It's just like a big event type field day. Rachel didn't always go, but this year Daniel had mentioned it a few times, and it was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in July, and she had nothing else planned, so she went this year. Like a catered barbecue, face painting station for children, all types of field sports, like the whole shebang. Rachel had been talking to a colleague near the drinks table for maybe 20 minutes when Daniel excused himself to say hello to someone across the lawn. She carried on talking, was comfortable, relaxed, and pretty much enjoying the afternoon. That's when a little girl appeared. She was maybe 4 or 5 years old, dark-haired in a yellow sundress, holding an empty plastic cup in both hands with the focused seriousness that children have when they want something. So she walked directly to Daniel, who had stopped a few feet away to talk to that colleague. And she tugged on his sleeve and said, "Daddy, can I have another juice?" Rachel heard it, and she processed it the way your brain first processes something that you think is impossible by assuming you just misheard it. So she actually smiled, and she thought, that's funny. She must have the wrong person. Like she's a little short kid. She probably can't even see that's not even her dad. Then a woman appeared on the edge of the lawn, scanning the crowd. Mid-30s, professionally dressed, and the expression on her face was like the ordinary distracted look of someone who's looking for a child at a busy event or something. So she spotted the little girl and started walking toward her, then looked up and saw Daniel and stopped. The little girl, who had been waiting patiently, pointed up and said to her mother with pure, unfiltered certainty of a child who simply knows what she knows, "There's Daddy." So the 3 adults stood there in a triangle in the middle of a sunny company picnic. Daniel turned white. The other woman, whose name was Karen, by the way, also turned white, and Rachel stood very still, holding her drink, and understood that the life that she had been living for 7 years was not the life she thought she was living. Like in that very moment, her heart sunk into her stomach, and she just knew, like, oh shit. She just knew. So nobody screamed, nobody made a scene. They kind of just like naturally moved away from the crowd by some collective instinct and toward the edge of like the parking lot area. And Daniel was immediately asked by both women in separate sentences that collided in the air with like what was happening, what is going on. He didn't try to lie. There was no version of a lie that the moment allowed for. Like he just could not get away with a lie. All he said was, I can explain. Neither woman wanted an explanation. They wanted to know what was going on. Like, they wanted the facts. The facts extracted over the following 10 minutes were these. Daniel had maintained two completely separate lives for nearly 6 years. Rachel was his wife, legally married, the relationship that existed on paper. Karen was his partner in a neighboring state. They were not legally married, but he had told her they were common law partners, a commitment that he described to her in terms as permanent as any wedding ceremony. He had a 5-year-old daughter with Karen. Her name was Lily, the little girl in the yellow pale dress. He had structured his work schedule, which genuinely did require regular travel, to create a framework that allowed him to maintain both households. So 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Calls from hotel rooms that could have been anywhere. Different social circles. Neither woman had ever had a reason to meet anyone from the other's life. Different holidays. He managed Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, and the anchoring occasions of a shared life by creating separate versions of every one of them. Different stories. Each woman had a coherent, detailed, consistent account of his life. Each account was a different architecture built on the same foundation of life. Karen had known about Rachel. Rachel had known about Karen. The only reason any of it collapsed was that his employer had that annual event open to all regional staff and their families, and both families happened to show up. And really, Karen was surprising Daniel because she knew about the event too, and it was really close to where they live. So she surprised him. She showed up. A 5-year-old girl asking for apple juice was the single point of failure in 6 years of a double life. Rachel filed for divorce within a month of that happening. The legal process was straightforward in the way that the legal processes sometimes are when the facts are unambiguous, even when everything else is chaos. Karen's situation was more complicated. She and Daniel had never legally married, which meant her financial and legal protections were significantly weaker, despite 6 years of what she had understood to be a committed partnership. She had structured her life around that partnership, career decisioning, housing, the raising of their daughter, in ways that the absence of legal documentation made very difficult to unpick. She retained a family lawyer. The process was longer and harder. The two women who had been, without knowing it, living parallel versions of the same deception met twice more after the picnic. Not to compare notes exactly. More, Rachel said afterward, because they were the only two people in the world who fully understood what the other one was experiencing. That is strange and an unwanted kind of bond, but it is a bond. You know what I'm saying? Karen's daughter, Lily, was 5 years old and had done nothing except ask her father for a drink. She is the person in this story who deserved it the least and lost the most. The coherent, present father she had known, replaced by someone who had appeared at irregular intervals under court-ordered arrangements. Children adapt because they have to. That's not the same as, that doesn't make it fair. They adapt because they have to, but that doesn't really make it fair. Daniel's colleagues learned about it over the following few weeks. It wasn't apparent to them at the event because everybody kept their cool and they just stepped over to the side. So gradually, so yeah. But the vibe was at work was pretty different because that's some heavy duty drama, and infidelity is really frowned upon even in any kind of workplace. So it was an uncomfortable, few weeks after that for him, and he resigned, before he could be asked to leave because it was coming. So people who hear this story almost ask the same first question. How? How does someone maintain two completely different lives for 6 years without being discovered? The honest answer is with enormous, sustained, exhausting effort. A double life of this kind is not a passive thing. It requires constant management. Every story has to be consistent. Every calendar has to be tracked. Every photograph has to be considered. Every offhand remark to one person has to be remembered in case it contradicts something said to the other. It is, by any measure, a full-time second job. That second question people ask is why? Why? And this one is harder. Daniel, in the limited statements he made during the divorce proceedings, offered nothing that functioned as an explanation anyone found satisfying. He did not claim he had been unhappy. He did not claim either relationship was incomplete. He seemed, as far as anyone could determine, to have simply wanted both lives. He wanted both. Somewhere along the line, that the wanting was enough to just justify it. He was just like, I'm gonna have it, man. I'm doing good. I could take care of them both. I'm going to do this. That is not an explanation. It's an absence of one. And Rachel has said in the years since that she eventually made peace with not having a better answer because she understood that searching for a reason that made sense would require her to spend her life trying to map the logic of someone else's choice. And she had other things to do. And, no one should ever do that. We should actually recognize when we are doing that. Like, we get hurt sometimes, obviously. We all go through trials and tribulations in life, and things hurt. Certain things hurt, and you want to know why. You need an explanation. You feel like that's going to give you some sort of closure, but it is not. It is absolutely not, because nothing will ever amount to enough. Nothing will be a good enough why someone betrayed you like that. So it's actually just a setup. It's just a trap to suck energy from you. So yeah, just become aware when you are kind of stuck on something like that. When you're stuck on betrayal and you have to just let it go. You can't, like, you can't make logic to why other people do the things that they do. All you can do is know your worth, know your value, and know when it's time to set a boundary and move on. And in this case, both women did just that. And I'm so happy that the story ends like that, with both women, without a question, walking away. Rachel, she ain't have no kids, so she said, no connection, I'm done. She didn't even, a month was too long for her, but she had to, tie up things and arrange to move on. But she was gone. She wasn't gonna play the games and why, and people do that, and they try to win him over. Who is he gonna choose? And neither of them did that. Karen was just like, we're gonna go to court. And she actually found out the hard way that her relationship wasn't this whole, like, common law marriage. The seriousness of her relationship just didn't exist. It was what he was telling her. She had no legal ground whatsoever. But that didn't stop her from saying, okay, well, I got legal ground with this child support and his visitation. We're going to set that up, and that's going to be that. We're not going to play games where I'm entertaining you and playing family with you. No. So, shout out to both Rachel and Karen for being strong queens and setting that boundary and, knowing their worth. Um, so that was today's story. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Feel free to send me any of your tales or tangents that you have been through that you would like me to share here on the channel. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you.